serving on a jury would drop that down to a misdemeanor, and the most you'd see is a year in jail.
Or most of them juries will ask to have the entire case dismissed.
Yeah, you'd think the majority of people would just dismiss it and say he saved X amount of lives, he defended himself and others, there's no crime here, so to speak. Let's just dismiss that charge.
Yeah, the judge says, here's the charges and stuff, tell the jurors this is what they want. And sometimes they go back and say, they're asking the judge saying, we cannot agree on these charges, but we can agree on to this charge.
Yeah.
And the prosecutor and then your lawyers and the judge will have to agree, saying, hey, the jurors want in it immediately, but they're agreeing on this.
And it could get completely plead down to like disorderly conduct or something for discharging it, someplace instead of having it be a gun charge of discharging a firearm. The one thing you do have to keep in mind, though, 80% of the time you go to draw your gun and point it at somebody, that's enough to kill whatever happened. Because you're presenting the gun to them. 80% of the time, all you have to do is point the gun at someone. You don't have to actually follow all the way through, but in order to carry a gun, you should be willing to follow all the way through if you have to.
And also Grant Travels, I'm going to say Grant Travels, but now Grant Adventures, used to be a cop and stuff.
Yeah.
And the technical term is, once a cop, it's always a cop.
Yeah. And really, back in my naive days, right when I quit being a cop, I thought only cops have to, worry about carrying a gun, because it's true. They go into situations where they have to go put themselves into danger, whereas Joe Blow citizen does not necessarily have to put yourself in danger. But there are also times where I can't control what a human being is going to do coming at me personally.
And was Grant Avengers experienced 4 times now.
Yeah.
With the gun.
Yeah, I explained that in the other videos where the Burger King robbery, and I have about 30 situations that a gun could have maybe helped, but about 4 of those times I definitely should have had a gun, just because for my own protection. But here recently, this last year, it seems to have gotten worse and worse in my opinion, and I'm going to start carrying for my own protection. I think it's worth the investment and the time and the training, and I honestly think all of us should start packing, just so you have that option.
And if you don't want to carry stuff, and you want to know aspects of the class and stuff, take the hunter safety, take the concealed weapons class, so you know how to use the gun proper.
Yeah, and mostly those, yeah, exactly. Most of those classes are the legalities of self-defense. Know what you're facing if you were to go to use it, so you're not just blindly, oh my God, I'm down for a murder charge, because there's a possibility that you would be looking at a murder charge until they clear that up and decide self-defense. Unfortunately, that's the world that we live in. You could be facing a murder charge if you go to use the gun.
And this is not for us and stuff that showing you this guns and stuff. There's other YouTubers and stuff that show you what's technically called a toy.
Yeah.
Will show you the guns and show you the gun safety and stuff.
Yeah, there are lots of experts and instructors even on YouTube that you can watch videos on YouTube if nothing else. At least take the time to watch those videos, and they'll go through all the gun safety rules and start practicing that, because they've learned that from instructors on the street. So if you don't do the class, at the very minimum, at least do the videos on YouTube about what you're getting to, and treat this all seriously.
And if you really want to practice and stuff with guns and stuff, but you don't want to use ammunition and stuff, buy a toy water gun.
Yeah.
Or airsoft gun. That way you can actually train and then get comfortable that you're not going out to the deadly weapon.
And you can also buy just the dummy rounds or whatever for this, and be able to dry fire that at your house or whatever, because it doesn't go off, it just makes a popping noise. And that way you're able to train yourself.
You might weaken the firing hammer. That's what you're gonna.
Yeah, if you do it too often, you probably down the line you probably would. But if you do it just a little bit to get yourself used to the trigger and pointing and drawing and stuff like that, it benefits you more than it benefits the wear and tear on the gun. As long as you're not doing it continuously all day, every day, and overdoing it. You can dry fire, especially Glocks. You can dry fire Glocks a lot, and they'll take a lot of abuse. And actually, for right now, technically speaking, since this is a brand new gun, like with the slide being the way it is and everything, one, I should clean it and grease it, and two, I should be doing the firing and moving the slide back and forth and everything to loosen it up anyway, because it's a pretty tight gun at the moment. I mean, it'll function, but it just the moving it around
because
loosen
battling the slider deal and the clip and stuff.
Yeah. Any gun that you buy brand new, don't give up on immediately. Like if you don't like it, if it's trying to lock up or whatever, make sure you get at least 200 rounds through it before you go to try to sell it or something, because it takes most firearms about 200 rounds to actually get to full the regular status that you're supposed to be at.
And before that, they could jam. If you're not sure, go to the gun store, talk to the people there, and they will tell you. They'll try to fit the perfect gun for you.
Yeah.
Be nice and respectful for them. If they're treating you like awful, don't go to them, because they.
And like I said, I know from experience, the Glock 21 that I carried as a service duty weapon when I was a cop, the full size version of this worked perfectly in my hands. I haven't taken this one out to take it to shoot it yet, but I've read from the reviews that the compact version of this is hardly any difference from the 21, which is why I went with the 30 small frame. Shooting the same caliber that I was used to shooting before, because it's a 45. And I'm relatively sure I'll be able to work with this for as little as I plan on using it, for self-defense. I mean, the goal is to have it on you, but obviously not have to go use it unless you actually have to do it. But I want to be proficient enough to use it should the need arise.
If the gun's not feeling you comfortable, your handgun, then the gun's not perfect for you.
Yeah, exactly, because there are all sorts of different guns. There's tiny revolvers for big hands. There's big guns for teeny tiny hands. So you do want to take your time and research the right type of firearm for you, because they make them all sorts of different sizes for that reason.
Even an identical gun can be different.
Yeah. Yeah, the other guns I could possibly decide on would be a Glock 21, the full-size duty weapon that would carry in a bag down the line, maybe. But I think this is more useful at the moment to carry it literally on me than a 21. But if I did go back, I'd go back to 21. Or I'd get a 1911 chambered in probably 9mm, because the 9mm, the 1911 by itself is a huge gun, but then 9mm kind of counteracts the recoil on it. And then I'd consider a 9mm Ruger LCR revolver as the backup. That's the only 3 guns I'd be interested in buying outside of what I've got. There are positives and negatives to this kind of gun. This, what they call, striker fired or whatever, both the striker fired and the polymer guns that I have there. The slide, if you put it slightly out of battery, now that gun is inactive while that slide is out of battery. So if somebody were to run up to you and put their hand against that gun, now you can't use the gun. It's too close quarters. Versus a revolver, you can still shoot the revolver. That's why I say down the line I might be packing a backup revolver for that reason. So if they were to get close enough to me, I still have an option that will go bang, whether they're on top of me or not. But I don't see that scenario happening bad enough that I need a revolver now. And I did not want to make a revolver my primary weapon, because they are not as good distance-wise as a striker fire or a polymer gun.
And also you might want to carry a pocket knife, so if, last resort, if you can't get to your secondary gun,
yeah,
you can still gain access to your knife.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt to have extras like a pokey flashlight or a pocket knife or anything like that. It doesn't hurt to have any, especially it doesn't hurt to have any other non-lethal options to carry on top of this, so that this is not your only option.
Yeah, even with the knife and stuff, you still can kill the person.
Yeah.
But potentially they might back off.
Yeah, the idea would be to get them to back off enough to be able to use your gun or whatever needed to be. I just would feel safer packing a gun around, and so I'm going to start doing it after I take the class. But for this next month, I'm going to go run 3 or 4 trucks out there without the gun. That way it's just faster and easier to fly. I don't have to go check the gun and all this. I'm not saying you shouldn't. And in the back of my mind, I want to have my gun. But right now, without the CCW class and permit, I don't want to take it with me at the moment. It's too much of a legality problem. I go to use that, and I don't have the permit. That's one more step. They're going to say, why didn't you take the time to get the training and the permit, and etc., and before you went willy-nilly on whoever. And they're going to use that against me in court. But if I have the permit, obviously that works in my favor against prosecution.
And the DEA will come up with random shit and stuff. Say, oh, this person could have done this and this and this and this.
Yeah, so I don't need to give them more of a reason. So at the moment, it's going to stay here. And then I'm going to travel around, get 3 or 4 more trucks, hopefully at 1,300 miles. And then that I get paid about $800 of those miles each time, and save up money, come back and do the permit, because that's the other thing. I have to come back to the state of Montana to do the CCW permit. I can take other permits in other states, but it looks better if I'm a Montana resident and I have a Montana permit. So I got to come back here to do the class. But that's the plan in terms of the gun. I'm going to have the class, and then after this next month, I'll have that gun carrying around on me all the time, because I have no reason not to, especially if I have the permit.
And the concealed weapon permit that we did our research, it comes up to 5 years.
Yeah.
So every 5 years.
Yeah, about every 5 years, pretty much like your driver's license, you have to go around and get it again. But even then, you don't have to take the class. You just have,
you might have to do a refresher.
You may have to do a refresher, a smaller refresher, and then pay your local sheriff the permit again. But even still, you should be doing refreshers anyway. Just the bare minimum, you should shoot maybe a couple hundred rounds a year out of your gun that you have, just so you can stay certified for yourself and your capabilities in doing it. I wouldn't say go nuts and have to go spend 200 rounds at the range every weekend like some hobbyists do. I think that's a little much. But at least do like 200 rounds a year or so you can stay proficient in what you're doing. 10 rounds a month here and there.
And you can go to like certain hunting rifle ranges. Is what it's I think it's what it's technically called, a rifle range or handgun range. And you can see where's the free ones and which ones are you have to pay.
Yeah. The one thing I will say about ranges, though, is if you happen to have a private landowner, or you have your own land, set up your own range, because then you can do whatever you want at your own land or your buddy's land. That way you're able to practice drawing and shooting, and a lot of ranges won't let you draw and shoot because of the potential for accidents with your neighbors, that are also trying to shoot stuff. It's just safer to have your own place all to yourself or whatever. Go out there and practice what you need and want without getting anybody else in trouble, or safety of others.
If you can't find a place, go to like a rancher or a farmer and stuff and ask, can I practice shooting on your land? And you make sure you clean it up.
And for the activists out there, I probably hate to mention this in their video, but actually if you offer to go practice shooting prairie dogs on any rancher's land, they're going to say, oh hell yeah, they're going to be...
They're going to say yes. They're going to ask, but say, make sure your shell is clean up.
Yeah. Yeah, that is the one thing, because the cattle will come along and eat the shells and whatnot, and so you want to clean up after yourself. But most ranchers are going to be right on. If you want to walk out in my field and start shooting every prairie dog you got in the place,
or
have
wolf.
at it.
Or wolf.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But they sometimes say, bring the wolf and stuff, and they might pay you a little money.
Prairie dogs are protected species, except for on actual ranch land, where they can be exempt if you're targeting them for the purpose of shooting them to not ruin the pasture land. Because what they do is they dig holes and they screw up the grass around that hole in about a 5-foot space, and that obviously, if you get a lot of prairie dogs doing that, it takes away from the grass that the pasture has. And so ranchers have an exemption from the the Protected Species Act for prairie dogs, so long as you're shooting them for that purpose. But activists out there are going to be like, don't encourage people to go shoot animals. You're actually helping the rancher out if you go shoot prairie dogs.
And you're going to eliminate the prairie dogs down a bit, but not eliminate them completely.
Yeah, not to mention they offer you a moving target, because obviously they pop up out of their holes. So, they're the best mechanical moving target you could get, really. Because they pop up and then they hear the noise from the other one, and another one pops up over here.
But please go to their houses, because you technically are trespassing. But if you go to their house and ask for permission,
yeah, make sure you get permission.
And actually make sure you can get a written permission, just in case the sheriff comes and questions you, or the Fish and Game.
Yeah, that's not a bad.
Then you can show them and say, hey, I got permission by this person. Here's their information. Here's the person.
Yeah, and then that helps protect you too, because then you're not just shooting them as a sport, you're shooting them to help that rancher out. And you have proof of it.
Even just that letter and stuff, even if they don't give you the letter and stuff, at least get the name and phone number, so just in case they get stopped, you get stopped, you can say contact this person,
Yeah.
and they can easily say, oh yeah, hi John. You say, oh, that's Grant of interest, got permission to hunt. Okay, and it'll just end it right there and then.
Exactly. And then depending on the country where you're at, there's coyotes and wolves and other places that you can legally go on a rancher's land and do that if you're doing it for that purpose, if you're not doing it just for sport.
But if it was like if a bear comes and stuff and tries to attack cows and stuff, it's technically illegal and stuff, but you're protecting the major food source for the public.
Yeah. But those are just some things you can do with your gun to go legally practice for yourself, and then you can practice drawing out of your belt or whatever as many times as you want. Me personally, I'm going to carry in a bag, or I'm going to carry in a chest pocket of a coat, or I might, if I get the right pair of pants, start carrying in the pocket. But I don't think.
Now.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to carry a belt on the belt like some people say you're supposed to. I'm not going to carry appendix or 3 o'clock or 9 o'clock. Even though they are technically faster draws for my situation, living with the gun and literally sleeping with the gun and everything else, because that gun's going to be on me 24/7, I'd rather have it in a chest pocket where somebody would have to feel me up to get to it.
And also practice withdrawing from both hands.
Yeah, you always want to be able to try to be ambidextrous, both drawing and shooting, because you never know what happens to your dominant hand. As a left-hander, I already had to do that for the Army because they made me have to do right-handed shooting, and then as a cop I wanted to carry left-handed mostly for being dominant, but then when you're walking up to a car, it's actually advantageous to have the weapon on your left-hand side.
And if you ever notice some police officers that have tasers, the taser is on the opposite end of their gun.
Yeah, and they do that out of muscle memory so that when they go to use one hand, that hand only knows that specific gun. I mean, they're cross-trained in it if they have to be, but...
And the way their tasers are positioned, too.
Yeah. That way they just know from memory, this is a taser I'm drawing from way up here versus that's a gun I'm drawing from way down there in the belt, or vice versa. But I think that's everything I can cover for right now in the video. Again, I just wanted a disclaimer the third time, that gun is completely unloaded. As you saw in there, had the cable lock on it and everything. It's locked in the case now, so there's no way, safety-wise, you can try and claim that we are doing anything that's unlawful with guns in this video, so there's no way I should get dinged on that. Just wanted to show you my new quote-unquote toy, even though it's not a toy, but that's why people call it toy for that reason, because they're, you know, fun, something fun to play with. It is a hobby, I mean, to some people. Me, it's not so much a hobby so much as an extra tool. You know, I'm gonna carry it around just like I would my wallet or my phone, you know, just to have it in case I need it.
And it's the technical term is either called a pistol, handgun, or most people call it a toy for short, because...
Well, the hobbyists that use it as for a hobby call it a toy, because it is, you know, they're basically different versions of a hobby to them. And by hobbyists, I mean the people who go out there and shoot 200 to 500 rounds a week, every week, and they can probably zero in on you clear across the Walmart parking lot and nail you right in the head. You know, they've done it so much.
Usually they see you open carry and stuff and say, "Oh, nice toy," or nice handgun," and usually it's universal.
Yeah. But you don't want to have a gun and then not know what to do with it and not take the time to go shoot it and do anything. But you also, you know, in my opinion, I also don't want to be 500 rounds every weekend with it. I'm not a complete hobbyist either. I'm right in the middle of that, you know. I want to be proficient with the gun, but I don't live and breathe shooting the gun. I just have it as a tool.
And some of us don't have a lot of money that can waste $200 to $300
yeah,
to
not to mention
$400.
Speaking of the rounds, this is chambered in 45 ACP, and most rounds are actually $2 a bullet. So, not to mention the fact that there's a tourney on every bullet that you send down range. There's also $2 cost.
And some ammunition that goes with this gun can range up to 50 to 100 plus.
Yeah, if you really wanted to go expensive, hardcore, heavy weight bullets, then yeah, they can get really expensive. But your average self-protection round is about $2 a bullet for the 45 ACP. That's why I say some people like the less recoil of 9mm, and they like the less cost because 9mm is way more available than 45 is. But the old cop saying is, a long time ago, somebody was hard on drugs on PCP or something. They unloaded the whole entire mag of 9mm, and the guy kept coming. And that's why some departments switched to 45 ACP. But at the same time, I was a police officer. Ever since then, I've really would have rather have 45, because the problem, yeah, you can take a 9mm and you can get the job done with a 9mm on a range, but try you moving and taking cover, and your target you're shooting at is shooting back at you, and it's also moving. You want the stopping power of one or two 45s, in my opinion, over a 9mm. On a range where the target's not moving, then yeah, your 9mm is going to kick your 45's ass every time on the scores. But that's on a range, that's not on real life scenario, in my opinion. I would rather have the stopping power, as they say, than a 9mm. Not to say that 9mm doesn't have their place in self-defense, because it does, especially for women with the less recoil. It's better to have a 9mm, in my opinion, if you're a woman, than try to go with a 45 or a 10mm.
And we're not trying to be offensive to women and stuff. It's just
no, it's just your body type and the recoil of the gun.
It's data.
Yeah. Your ability to be proficient, and there are some women out there who are probably more proficient in it than I would be. So it depends on the person. But most women who are just walking around, they're literally just walking around with a gun to protect themselves from being raped down on the side of the street or whatever, you know. And again, if they don't take the time to be proficient in that gun, it doesn't matter what gun they have, what caliber they have, if they're not proficient in it. But a lot of times 9mm works better to get on target for a woman than you know, a 45 would be.
And do males get raped too? Yes. So it's not.
And anything can happen to anybody. You know, I was at a train platform on Love's airport in Dallas Love Airport, like I explained in another video, and I had 3 huge black guys come up against me, and I'm glad that train came up where I could push the one guy into the train and get away that way, like I explained in that video, because otherwise that would not have been fun. 3-on-1, and I would not have won that fight. I'd have fought as hard as I could, but it would have been bad.
So you probably would have seen him being dead, and so now I can make a video.
Yeah, so anything can happen to anybody. But just, you know, this is another step towards protection. To try to, you know, it's the great equalizer. I take that gun out and I shoot those same 3 guys. You know, now I'm the one that walks away. Necessarily, depending on how it goes, but yeah. They don't call it the great equalizer for nothing.
He might have 2 going after him while he's firing at 1. But usually after you shoot out the second one, usually the other one might retreat.
Yeah. And like I say, in most instances, if you pull the gun, 80% of the time, that's all it's going to take is pulling and pointing the gun at somebody.